Year 6370. Many years after the defeat of the vampire Vlad, son of the devil, and the beginning of the reign of King Dokkan Swiftwater in Ferelden, three figures stand high on a hill, overlooking the capital city, Loriston, of the Kingdom of Dovah. Their red-hooded cloaks flap as strong gusts of wind whip around them. An insignia is sewn on the back of each cloak, a sinister skull adorned with a golden crown. Further back from the hill, a massive army can be seen approaching their position. The insignia of the three figures is sewn onto hundreds of banners and battle standards carried by the coming soldiers. An invading army is about to take the city, and a new era will soon begin. Lorgan Bayander Lorien, King Lorien the 92nd, had been a kind and gentle king. The tenets of justice, honor, and goodness reigned supreme as he ruled over his lands. The regions of King Lorien's Valley, the Fringe, and Clad Crownlands were prosperous, but in the dark lands of the Abandoned, rogues, thieves, dark magic, and cutthroats still lurked. It was from the Abandoned where the three Fury Lords of Vigor raised their armies and positioned themselves to end the Lorien dynasty. After the sack of Loriston, King Lorien was executed and decapitated in the city square, his head then stuck on a spike at the city gates. During the attack, the young prince, Lorien's son, was ushered out of the city by the late king's champion, Zaros, and a small band of trusted knights and retainers. Year 6380. Vigor has ruled over Dovah for 10 years. All of Lorien's armies and the great lords of the valley were brought to heel against the might of the Vigor machine. Three entities within Vigor were formed: Forte, Blues, and Furia. Forte was the largest group and served as the enforcement wing. Their forces traveled the kingdom to impose Vigor's rule on any who might fall out of line. Blues was formed from Dovah lords that formerly served King Lorien and have since bent the knee to Vigor. This wing was in charge of administration, ruling the populace, and maintaining order. Furia was composed of Vigor's true leadership, the three Fury Lords and their closest allies. Furia was the most powerful wing of Vigor. Furia's movements, motivations, and origins are secretive, and whenever they show up, major events take place. Many tired of Vigor's oppressiveness and sought to end their reign. One such man, King One, intended to take Dovah for himself. Adding to that, he brought the formidable army of Un with him to invade Dovah. He sought allies to assist him in his conquest of the kingdom. The king of Un sent out a call to other nations and kingdoms, to those with ambition, to bounty hunters seeking coin, to mercenaries hungry for pillage and plunder, and to adventurers and aspiring heroes in search of fame and glory. Multiple factions arrived to answer his call. King One would combine these separate factions into one army, one powerful fighting force. One would be the name of this alliance. On a fateful day early in the war, a group of adventurers, each with their own motivations and goals, arrived to answer the call. The goblins, Blyken and Stripe, a half-drow bard, Vesiles, a human mage, Soren, a high-elf pirate, Vecni, a young human conscripted into the war, Prince, and a half-elf with much to prove, Roland. Together they will embark on a grand adventure in the midst of the Great War. End of prologue. Soren, Vesiesh, Blyken, Stripe, Roland, Vecni, and Prince arrived at the One encampment, a staging area for the ongoing invasion, containing the One army, war mammoths, ice cats, wolves, horses, and barbarian-like Highlander soldiers. The 7 adventurers got acquainted before exploring the camp. Ves and Roland got on well with one another, flirting and building rapport. Vecni, who viewed herself as a motherly figure for Roland, appeared disapproving and displeased at this. Vecni, Prince, and Stripe enjoyed some ale, courtesy of the One army, while Soren and Ves met with the leader of the camp, Lord Winnegar, also known as the Nude Lord, the Great Winnegar, and the Sun Serpent Lord. Meanwhile, Blyken followed Vecni around creepily. Blyken quickly realized Stripe happened to be his brother, who he had not seen for the last 4 years. During the day, Soren and Vesiesh revealed they were title-holding nobles from the kingdom of Ferelden. While speaking with the adventurers, Lord Winnegar explained that King One and the bulk of his army were marching north towards Loreston, the capital of Dovah. They had recently passed through Pridecutter Keep and entered into King Lorien's Valley. Winnegar explained many in Dovah opposed Vigor's tyranny. He tasked Soren and Ves with acquiring allies to assist One in the conquest of the kingdom. He handed Ves a ledger to write down the names of individuals or groups who would join the alliance, and asked she had them come to see Winnegar at the encampment. A short time later, Vesiesh and Soren met the One spymaster, Lord Weald. He supplied them with a crude map of the region created by Weald's agent, Merciless. Weald advised them another one of his agents had traveled to Queensgrace, then to the Birdhaven ruins, and discovered some kind of intel. On his way back towards the One encampment, he was killed. Merciless found his body and found he had a crumpled piece of paper in his possession with the word 33 written on it. Weald tasked Soren and Ves with traveling to meet with a group called Chaos at the Birdhaven ruins and the group called Slay in Queensgrace. He requested they find out the meaning behind 33 and the reason for his agent's death. Vecni, Prince, and Roland explained to Blyken and Stripe how they defeated the Munronian Armada and Grand Admiral Gamino with the help of the Tarkaeans shortly before arriving in Dovah. Later, the full group of adventurers spoke to Winnegar further. He suggested they stay away from the battlefront for now. He advised them to assist Lord Weald and Lord Commander Leppert with their objectives during the war and leave the fighting to the One Strike Force, King One, and One's Master of War for the time being. He also mentioned most factions participating in the war had their own names and sigils, and it would be wise to come up with their own banner and faction name, making it easier for One captains and commanders to recognize and to call upon them during battle. Winnegar mentioned to Prince that the men he was hunting, the Misfit Bastards officers, passed through the One encampment and traveled north. Prince remembered that he learned on his voyage to the One encampment that the Misfit Bastards planned to travel to Epona's Bog to meet with King Dokkan of Ferelden in a secret settlement called the Doghouse. Some of the members of the group discussed their knowledge and relationships with Ferelden and King Dokkan Swiftwater. Prince was raised in Ferelden and despised Dokkan, blaming him for the death of his former captain, Mundo, and for the death of his mother as well. The adventurers met the friendly man of many nicknames, Lord Commander Leppert, at the war tent. He did not have much for them to do, but introduced them to some of the One Strike Force members. Kagan, a Goliath with many scars on his body, Blood Dragon, a green dragonborn with red tribal tattoos on his face, and Nightblade, a high elf swordsman. Our hero slept for the night, and on the following morning, observed much of the army had departed, including Leopard and his men. The party prepared to head north, debating with one another where they should travel to first. Before leaving, Vess convinced Winnegar to provide her with a steed, a silky black horse she named Curva. The adventurers discussed where to travel to first. Prince urged the party to head towards Epona's Bog, but Soren and Vess convinced the group to journey to Queensgrace after stopping for a respite at Serve's Tavern. The group began to journey north. On the first night, Prince told the tale of how he obtained his nickname. Prince later revealed to Soren and Vesiesh he aimed to kill King Dokkan Swiftwater when he found him, and blamed Dokkan for most of the misfortune in his life. Prince also explained his father left him when he was a child, after being conscripted to war by King Dokkan. He believed his father was still alive and became a badass, which was odd as his father was a simple farmer when he left. Prince added his mother died due to Dokkan's poor leadership, and his former captain, Mundo, basically a second father to him, was murdered because of King Dokkan as well. He stated his old pirate crew, the Misfit Bastards, carried out the killing of Mundo on Dokkan's behalf. Prince talked proudly of the Misfit Bastards officers he had already killed. He showed Stripe, who was very impressed, the necklace he had made of deceased officers' fingers. Soren informed Prince he had never met his real father, but that he was raised by King Dokkan, who was his stepfather. And despite this, he does not like or respect him. Roland chimed in that he had daddy issues as well, and added his dad does not care for him. During the group's travels, Stripe dropped a considerable amount of random items that he was carrying onto the road. It appeared he grew more and more burdened by the items he carried as each day passed. Upon arriving at Serve's Tavern, the adventurers heard a woman screaming inside. As Vecni and Prince entered the building, Stripe exhibited some strange behavior, inappropriately caressing and asking Prince to carry him into the tavern. Inside Serve's, the group observed a large group of Forte soldiers, Forte being the enforcement branch of Vigor, threatening a barkeep and beginning to assault a young girl, while a small group of bar patrons stood frightened against the far wall. Vesiesh used her magic to transform herself into Cliff, a fabricated old man, before anyone in the bar was able to notice her. While others spoke with the barkeep and the soldier accosting him, Stripe attempted to fondle the soldier and undo his belt. Vecni rummaged around behind the bar, finding 25 gold pieces in a box and stealing it. Meanwhile, Stripe pestered one of the Forte soldiers, expressing his desire to have sexual intercourse, specifically with a male. The Forte soldier offered Stripe the barkeep. Instead, moments passed by, and Vess, disguised as Cliff, casted sleep on the cluster of soldiers surrounding the young girl. Two of the Forte soldiers and the young girl herself succumbed to the spell and fell asleep. The soldiers became aware that the adventurers group had someone that had done something towards them, and they began to slowly draw out their weapons and move aggressively towards the party. Stripe, thinking quickly, offered to have sex with all of them. Prince looked up from his drink and realized the soldiers might be considering attacking them. He calmly stated, "You guys really don't want to do that." While speaking with the Forte soldiers, the party learned of 3 Forte leaders, Frank Mandred, Karagonda, and Edgar Brazil. Roland observed one of the terrified patrons leaning on the far wall was actually Honesty, a gnomish bard familiar to Vecni, Prince, and himself from the voyage over to Dovah. Honesty was also familiar to Vess from one of her previous adventures as well. Vecni convinced the Forte soldiers to permit Honesty to walk over to her group, and upon doing so, Stripe immediately began rubbing his back in a molesty-type fashion. Vecni impressed one of the Forte soldiers, Brachus, with the story of how she, Prince, and Roland defeated the Muronian Armada and Grand Admiral Gamino. Vecni told the man she and her group would join Vigor. Brachus was excited warriors like Vecni and her allies would join because of him, and he said that he expected a reward from Vigor leadership. Brachus drafted a writ of passage for the party to help them avoid confrontation with Vigor troops en route to Vigor Valley City in order to meet Frank Mandred. The party whispered to one another, attempting to devise a way to kill the more than 20 soldiers that stood in their way. One plan was for Prince to put out the fire in the hearth, leaving the soldiers without sight. Then Vess would follow up by casting fairy fire on them, giving the heroes sight of their enemies and a huge advantage. Instead, another plan was decided upon. Vecni convinced the Forte soldiers to carry a basin of water outside the tavern, supposedly for Vess's horse. While this was going on, Stripe and the barkeep made love to one another. Soren woke up the sleeping girl and explained to her that he would do everything he could to protect her and keep her from harm. The soldiers told the group they were free to leave, once they killed the barkeep to prove their loyalty. Vecni asked Prince to do it, but Cliff, aka Vess, guilted him into staying his blade, as he would be acting in a manner similar to King Doken, the man that he hated. Vecni took it upon herself to execute the man, hurling a throwing dart at his neck, piercing it and causing him to choke to death on his own blood. The adventurers left the tavern to wait outside. Immediately upon exiting, Vecni threw up bile, disgusted with what took place inside the small building. Before leaving the back of the bar, Vecni observed some wanted posters. She shared the following wanted posters with the group. King 1, 20,000 gold bounty. Lord Craven, 1,000 gold bounty. Lord Hainsworth, 10,000 gold bounty. Prince Lorien, 20,000 gold bounty. Queen Inez, 14,000 gold bounty. And Snorian, 6,000 gold bounty. Vecni and the others were introduced to Crows, Lay, and Fievel, three of the patrons that were able to escape the tavern. The group followed through with Vecni's plan to kill the Forte soldiers. Vesiesh poured the alcohol Soren's unseen servant took from behind the bar all over the thatched roof of the tavern. Vecni lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it inside the tavern, then used shape water to freeze the door shut. The PCs readied weapons and spells, aiming them at the frozen door. Stripe aimed his crossbow. Roland summoned his red falchion and readied Eldritch Blast. Soren readied Magic Missile, and the other adventurers were prepared as well. The first Forte soldier burst through the door, lit a flame, and was met with Roland's Eldritch Blast, killing him instantly. Another Forte soldier, standing near the door, was shot down dead by Soren's Magic Missile, immediately after the first man lost his life. More Forte soldiers bursted through the door of the burning building and attacked the adventurers, dying in battle shortly after. Soren casted Minor Illusion, making the ice block that was placed in front of the door appear taller. Forte soldiers were no longer able to climb over the top of the block until they determined the top portion was just an illusion. Due to the intense heat and flames of the burning tavern, they had a mere 18 seconds to figure it out, but were unable to do so in time. All the men and the young girl inside burned to death in the inferno. The adventurers journeyed a bit further north, making camp for the night. Crows, Fievel, Lay, and Honesty followed, but kept a bit of distance, as the PCs did appear quite dangerous and unpredictable. Soren and Crows had a private conversation. Crows voiced his concerns for the safety of his two daughters, and asked Soren if he could keep them safe. Soren explained it would probably be best if he and his children did not travel with the group, as it would not be safe for them. Soren convinced Crows to bring his two daughters to the one encampment, and offered to aid Lord Winnegar and the others. Their names were written in the ally ledger. Before going to sleep that night, Vecni and Roland had a conversation. Vecni permitted Roland to begin using his pack sword, as long as he promised not to harm any of their friends with it. The party woke up in the morning, and Vess said goodbye to Crows, Fievel, and Lay. Honesty had left before anyone had awoken. The party continued north and observed the road was choked with corpses from some big battle. There were fallen lizardmen bearing this sigil, fallen humans bearing this sigil, and an assortment of fallen fey creatures, elves, dwarves, fairies, giants, gnomes, and even drow bearing this sigil. But the faction with the most fallen men was Forte. Vesiesh wondered what kind of leader could bring such an assortment of fey creatures together under one banner, especially the drow. Vecni seemed disgusted at the presence of drow in Dovah, and spit on one of the corpses. Further north, the party entered a clearing and what appeared to be the remnants of a Forte camp, where the thickest fighting must have taken place. As the group rummaged through the tents, a large pack of wild dogs appeared and confronted them, very concerned with the party and seemingly hostile. Lycan and Stripe attempted to avoid a fight with the hungry wild dogs, throwing severed limbs belonging to the deceased soldiers at the camp at the wild dogs that had the party surrounded. After fighting over the delectable treats, 2 of the dogs ran off with their delicious prizes. The rest of the 20 dogs continued to act aggressively towards the party. Prince raised his sword and yelled at the animals, causing half of them to take a step back. Soren used the Mold Earth spell to remove the dirt from underneath one of the mutts, causing the rest of the animals to attack. Stripe animal handled 3 of the dogs into becoming compliant and friendly, while Soren expertly wielded his Mold Earth spell, trapping dogs in holes and even burying 2 of them alive. Vesiesh used her sleep spell to control the battlefield and place multiple dogs into a slumber-like state at once, while she rode about the battlefield on her mount, Curva, keeping away from harm. Prince tore through some of the animals with his greatsword. The dogs struggled to even reach the heroes, as ready actions, spells, and actions protected the party from any harm in the initial fight. As the fight progressed, Stripe seemed quite interested in keeping the animals from harm. He urged the rest of the group to leave the dogs be, but only Vesiesh and Blyken appeared to heed his words. Blyken used his quarterstaff and Eldritch Blasts to slay some of the beasts. He tried to attack some of them non-lethally as well, but struggled to keep them alive after landing blows. Blyken did manage to knock one of them out with an Eldritch Blast, but Prince stabbed it to death shortly after. After the battle was over, Blyken raced to save the dogs, while Prince and Soren raced to hack them to pieces. Blyken managed to tie one of them up and protected it, while Soren and Prince massacred the other 5 dogs. Stripe was saddened by the murders of the defenseless animals. Prince was covered with blood from the dogs he had killed. Prince then attempted to butcher the deceased dogs for meat, but was extremely wasteful, hacking them to pieces with his greatsword without obtaining useful cuts of their flesh. A small band of famished goblins arrived through the bushes, with 6 hungry dogs in tow. They began to rummage about some of the tents, looking for food and shiny, precious things. Stripe approached the goblins and had a brief conversation with them. He realized the creatures were hungry and just looking for food, so he handed them a ration, which one of them ate immediately. The goblins eventually made their way over to the clearing and got a look at Soren and Vess. Realizing they were fancy and probably possessed wealth, the goblins demanded shiny from the 2 nobles. Vesiesh was quite disgusted the creatures attempted to speak with her and her brother. Blyken pointed Prince out to the goblins, who was attempting to hide nearby. Prince offered to give shiny to the goblins. He kindly approached and attacked the goblin in front with his greatsword, breaking its spine. A battle between the goblin group and the adventurers commenced. The 3 dogs that had gained trust and rapport with Stripe were torn apart by the new arrivals. Vess gave bardic inspiration to Prince and casted Tasha's hideous laughter to disable one of the goblins. Soren dropped the goblin into a hole using Mold Earth, causing Prince to get an opportunity to dispatch it with his greatsword. The goblins managed to move in on the fearless Prince, surrounding him completely on all sides. The evil little monsters hacked away at the brave pirate, and one even shot him with a short bow. Prince took massive damage, but managed to escape from their grasp, covered in wounds, his own blood and the blood of enemy goblins and wild dogs. The goblins' dogs attacked the dog Blyken had tied up, tearing it to shreds and killing it. Both groups of dogs began to battle each other, while Curva got attacked by the wild dogs as well, being bitten twice before being able to run a short distance away to relative safety. Vess casted Sleep again, hitting goblins and enemy dogs alike, gaining a tremendous amount of control over the battlefield as many hostile creatures became incapacitated. Upon seeing both Prince and Curva were badly injured and fleeing the goblins, Stripe approached Curva and did his best to calm the majestic creature. One of the goblins shot one of Stripe's new dog friends dead with an arrow. A limping and badly bleeding Prince shot one of the wild dogs dead with his short bow. Meanwhile, Blyken connected with an Eldritch Blast, killing one of the enemy goblins. A goblin killed Stripe's last remaining dog with an arrow, right after that. Suddenly, the party heard a big commotion. They saw a small entourage of goblins emerge from the woods. 6 well-fed, partially armored goblins walked into the camp. In between them was a 7th goblin, larger than the others. This goblin wore a chain shirt, carried a shield, and rode on a giant rat. The lead goblin rode out to the edge of the small cliff in the center of the camp and surveyed the battlefield. He noticed the dead goblins and dogs near the adventurers. This goblin made a confusing proclamation in Common, addressing the party. Before engaging with the new group of goblins, Soren buried another dog with dirt, using mold earth, suffocating the creature. Blyken, Stripe, Prince, and Soren utilized part of a broken wall as cover from the enemy goblins. Prince managed to fell another goblin with his bow. The goblin leader, who identified himself as Gonzar, expressed his displeasure with the adventurers' slaying of the other goblins. He rode his trusty rat mount over to the wall the party was using as cover and dismounted. Gonzar attacked Blyken, striking him twice with a sword and badly wounding the young warlock. Then he plunged into the murky stream nearby, poorly concealing himself. Prince maneuvered himself over to the area where Gonzar plunged into the murky water and stabbed down hard with his greatsword. He struck Gonzar and killed him with a single blow. Seeing their leader defeated, the remaining goblins fled, as did their dogs when they awakened from Vess's sleep spell. Gonzar's rat was extremely distraught, seemingly unwilling to leave its deceased master. Stripe had a heart-to-heart with the creature and convinced it to flee the battlefield. The adventurers looted the camp and continued their journey north, concerned more goblins might be drawn to the destroyed outpost. A short distance away from the camp, Stripe foraged for some food to feed the party. He was able to find nuts and berries with minor restorative properties, but he only shared the sustenance with Blyken and Prince, due to Vess and Soren's poor treatment of him and his brother. Further north on the same day, the adventurers encountered small hovels pressed up against the woods. They appeared to be occupied. Inside one of the hovels, the party met Hagar and Jade, a middle-aged couple that lived there. Vess used disguise self and appeared elven to the couple. Hagar assumed Vess was a high elf in service to Queen Inez of Queensgrace, and treated her with kindness and consideration. He was much less accommodating towards the Goblin brothers until Vess informed him they were her pets. Hagar and Jade told the group of their missing children, Jill and James. They explained beasts and monsters in White Fawn Forest had become emboldened since the arrival of the One Army. Perhaps they smelled the blood of battle. The couple also mentioned the group Blood Mist and described them as criminals, murderers, and rapists that sometimes posed as common folk. Vesiesh and Soren discussed with Jade and Hagar about possibly forming a search party to find Jill and James after arriving in Queensgrace. Later that night, as the party and their hosts got ready for bed, Stripe and Blyken made a fort using a blanket. The adventurers awoke in the home of Hagar and Jade. They spoke with the middle-aged couple. Hagar gave the group directions to Queensgrace and warnings about dangerous beasts in White Fawn Forest, as well as the gang of brigands called Bloodmist. Prince upset Jade and Hagar, telling them that their missing children, James and Jill, were probably dead. Hagar told the group a bit about Queensgrace, explaining Queen Inez's rangers were quite skilled and under the command of a first ranger, an elf who was missing his nose. After speaking further with Stripe, Hagar became increasingly upset, as Stripe plainly stated Hagar's children were dead. Hagar retired back into his home and mourned with Jade. Blaiken felt the urge to lead the party, and the rest of the day went by in a blur. The party traveled 3 spaces on the region map, then lay down to sleep for the night, without setting camp, making a fire, assigning watches, or casting alert. 4 hours into the night, Soren was awakened by a whisper. He alerted his sister, and the two went to investigate. The whisperer identified himself as Crows, one of the patrons they met at Serv's Tavern. As Vess and Soren neared his location, they heard multiple sets of footsteps running away from them into the woods. Soren and Vess pursued, and a short time later, they met Crows, accompanied by 9 orcs. Crows explained he was actually Lord Craven, the leader of Bloodmist and a man with a 1,000 gold bounty on his head. He continued that he intended to rob them. But before they came to harm, Soren pulled out his wand and casted suggestion on Lord Craven, convincing him to become friends with the 2 nobles. Lord Craven told the orcs to put away their weapons and asked Soren and Vess to help him ambush the rest of the party. Soren declined, and Vess suggested he and the orcs travel to Jade and Hagar's hovel to rob them instead. Vess and Soren discovered Lord Craven had been kidnapping children, and that his allies likely kidnapped James and Jill, Hagar and Jade's missing kids. Craven mentioned the way north into King Lorien's Valley was no longer clear, as the bridge leading across the chasm was destroyed by Forte. He explained there was a door leading to an underground labyrinth that crossed the chasm, but he did not know how to open it. Soren offered to open this door and to remove any wanted posters with Bloodmist members on them that he came across. Both groups then parted ways. Upon returning to the camp, Vess startled the rest of the adventurers awake by casting dancing lights and yelling for them to get up. The adventurers continued to travel towards Queensgrace. As they progressed, they came across a bottled-necked area of the path, choked with trees. Vesiesh casted Detect Thoughts and learned there were 4 hostile creatures nearby. The party was attacked by a small group of bugbears. The creatures attacked with morning stars and spears, some of them hid in trees, using cover and concealment. A short bit into the battle, more bugbears arrived, with a larger bugbear leader. Vess casted Sleep, taking one of them out of the fight, which was later killed by Roland with his falchion. Vecni dispatched of one of the creatures with her hand-to-hand combat skills, while Prince took a massive blow from the bugbear leader. Blaiken used Healing Light on Prince to bring him back from the brink of death. Vesiesh casted Sleep again, causing one of the bugbears in a tall tree to fall asleep and tumble to the ground below. Roland pounced on the fallen creature and stabbed it with his falchion, but this was not enough to kill the beast. The bugbear was able to stand back up and circle to Roland's back, clubbing him to the ground with its morning star. Immediately after her ally went down, Vecni fired a Kensai shot at the creature, taking it out of the fight for good. Blaiken casted Healing Light once again, this time on Roland, bringing him back up and back to the battle. During the fight, a red-haired woman wearing a green cloak over white and black armor, wielding a bow, arrived to assist the adventurers. Roland casted Whole Person on one of the bugbears, paralyzing it with the aid of Soren's Portent. The larger bugbear landed a massive blow on Blaiken, taking him out of the fight. Roland and Prince suffered damage and fell in battle as well. Roland taking an additional hit from a Morning Star after going down, which nearly killed him outright. After having taken massive damage from Prince earlier in the fight, the larger bugbear finally fell dead after suffering an arrow to the eyeball courtesy of Vecni Avumque. The battle raged on, and both sides became exhausted in the intense fight. Javelins were launched at the red-haired woman and Vecni appeared to fall in battle. The battle between the adventurers and the group of bugbears continued. Vecni fed a potion to Roland, bringing him back from the brink of death. Soren fed a potion to Blyken, returning him to the fight. And Roland stuffed berries and nuts into Prince's mouth, forcing him to chew and preventing him from meeting an untimely end. Prince woke up, his face covered in berry juice, and slid to the back of one of the enemy creatures, stabbing into its spine with his greatsword, killing the beast. One of the bugbears that was launching javelins from a tall tree descended and attempted to escape, running away from the battlefield. As the creature made its retreat, Roland fired an eldritch blast at it, the beam bursting through the back of the bugbear and exiting its chest. Prince chopped off the head of the last remaining bugbear, which was asleep due to Vess's sleep spell. Prince then fell to the ground, due to exhaustion and the wounds he suffered in the grueling battle. After the fight, the red-haired woman identified herself to the party as Merciless, one of Lord Wield's agents. She spoke to the party for a while about things going on in the Fringe, and then parted ways with them, after agreeing to keep a lookout for further ambushes. The adventurers continued north, where they came upon 3 small houses in the woods. The party searched one of the houses, and found it was ransacked with 2 dead gnomes inside. There was evidence present that led the group to believe Bloodmist was responsible and kidnapped children from the residents. While searching outside the home, a visibly upset Stripe came upon a single, small, pink sandal. Soren performed burials and a funeral service for dead gnomes discovered in the 3 houses that the adventurers explored. The group found some gold and items in the houses. Afterwards, they got to know one another a little better. Blyken revealed to the party he and Stripe were orphans, and their orphanage was burned down by an orange-haired leprechaun. He explained he came to Dovah to seek this leprechaun out and avenge his murdered friends. The adventurers realized Stripe's personality switched every day, and he embodied a new persona each time. The adventurers continued their journey north, towards Queensgrace. During their travels, Blyken realized he actually knew Roland's estranged father, Draven, as he stood in as a proctor during the Trial of Tears. Blyken and Stripe told Roland and the others a little about the trial that took place at their orphanage, Lost Treasures. The adventurers encountered the aftermath of a battle. Dead elven sleigh rangers, dead bugbears, and dead goblins laid on the battlefield. Blyken found a letter on one of the dead rangers, written by a KG, the first ranger of Sleigh. One of the rangers was wounded, but still alive and currently unconscious. Stripe unexpectedly, and without any warning, disemboweled the injured man. The adventurers continued north and came across a small bridge over a stream. They heard an inhuman voice demand they kill the humans in their group and toss them into the stream. After debating for a bit about throwing Soren into the water, the group walked across the bridge and were subsequently attacked by twiggy, shrubby plant creatures that fired small needles at them. The adventurers battled the monsters, slaying many. During the fight, Stripe displayed the ability to fire strange, lightning-enchanted crossbow bolts. Vines and creepers sprang to life, and 2 new plant-like creatures joined the fight against the party. Prince fell in battle to a giant barrage of needle projectiles, but Blyken acted quickly, casting Cure Wounds on his ally, bringing him back into the fight. The battle endured on, and the adventurers were eventually able to defeat their plant-based foes. The party continued north, and Blaken was finally reunited with Stripe's true personality on the following day. The party discussed Stripe's behavior since they joined together. The group attempted to give Stripe an understanding of his multiple personality disorder and the concerning issues that come up when he embodies certain ones, but he was disagreeable and stubborn during their explanations. The party traveled another week and came to the fork in the path. According to Merciless's map, the northwest path led to Whittle Falls, while the northeast path led to Queen's Grace. The adventurers strove northeast. They journeyed towards Queen's Grace and came across magic vines blocking their path. As they attempted to circumvent this obstacle, they heard the voice of a fairy named a Rose, who challenged them with riddles. Stripe solved the first riddle almost instantly after it was posed. Roland was able to answer the second riddle. The third riddle left each of the adventurers quite stumped. Vesiesh and Soren convinced a Rose to let the group pass after Ves revealed her father, Dakarth, was waiting for them at Queen's Grace. A Rose stated that Dakarth was a member of the Slay Royal Council and granted the party passage.